Check out the latest footwear innovation from Adidas, the Adizero Adios Pro 2, which features carbon fiber energy rods that are both lightweight and precisely tuned for a more anatomical transition. Everything from the ultra-light polyester upper to the resculpted midsole and the reinvented outsoles are designed for speed. Visit adidas.com to learn more today.
A lot of us are looking for ways to start our day feeling more joy and appreciation. And while some of us write gratitude lists or do yoga, others pour themselves a bowl of their favorite cereal, Honey Nut Cheerios. Because not only are Honey Nut Cheerios delicious, they can help lower cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet. So maybe the secret to a great mood all day is a little yoga, then writing your gratitude list over a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. Learn more about a heart-healthy lifestyle at Cheerios.com.
Welcome to the Take the Cake podcast. I am your host, Kate Noel, and I am so happy you're here. My mission is to inspire you to be the best version of yourself by truly honoring what your mind, body, and soul want and need. Here, we talk about everything and anything wellness, recovery, lifestyle stuff, lots more. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. I'm here with Danny, and I'm really excited to have you on. I've been following you for a while, and I've been listening to your podcast and looking at your beautiful artwork. Yeah, I'm just excited to get to know more about your hypothalamic amenorrhea journey and how that's shaped you. And you're just so a part of that community now. So tell me, just introduce yourself to my audience, who you are and what you do just on social media and on your podcast.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm excited. I was jazzed when you asked if I wanted to be on the show. So hello, everyone. Yeah. Wait, the question was to tell you, introduce myself.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Danny, live in Austin, Texas, and I have my own story, my history with HA and body image and chronic dieting and all of the things. And I, in a nutshell, just saw a gap for, having conversations about the mental and emotional challenges. And that has snowballed for me into also talking about the practical ways and tangible ways for recovery and tracking progress. And, over time, over a short period of time, I have just blown up my life with HA and helping women recover and helping women get pregnant after recovery and helping women just feel validated about their experience. So that's pretty much me. And I run the Hypothalamic Amenorrhea podcast and the HA Society, which is a community, basically a coaching and resource community for women with the very specific situation of HA. That's what I do.
I love that. It's so needed to the community because I think a lot of people with HA, they kind of go onto the internet space feeling really alone. At least that's what I did. And then you kind of quickly learn that there is a very niche community, and it's an amazing community. It's so inspiring. Just the recovery community in general it's so inspiring. I'm so glad to be a part of it. It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's niches within that niche too, people who really struggle with disordered eating. And then there's people who have, less of hangups around that and more just exercise addiction. And it is really interesting meeting all of the different people. And
yeah, we're going to talk more about diversity within HA, HA recovery. But can you actually, if you don't mind, could you be more specific with your own journey? What was your journey like with HA recovery? When did you lose your period? What were you doing around that time of your life? And what inspired you? Or what was your wake-up call, I guess?
Yeah, like lots of people, I'm not 100% sure when I developed it. I wasn't paying attention to that. But when I was about 19, I started weightlifting and I got really into it, and I became a competitive amateur athlete. And that led me to lose my period pretty quickly because I started macro tracking at the same time. I wanted to look the part of an athlete. That was basically what happened. And a lot of people resonate with that, right? We start exercising and then we want to look like we exercise. And so we start tracking macros or calories or something like that. And in amongst that experience, my period disappeared. And I remember knowing intuitively that that's why it disappeared, because I'm an athlete and blah, blah, but I didn't think it had any repercussions other than being unable to get pregnant, which was a plus for me because I was 19 and I didn't want to get pregnant. So I thought everything was going great. Mm-hmm. And I let that continue for a really long time and continued to think nothing of it. And one day I went to my OBGYN, like annual checkup, and he asked when my last period was, and I quite proudly, he was like, no, years ago, probably 6 to 7 years ago at that point. And he just mentioned to me that we don't like that we don't like it when women don't get periods. And he prescribed me the progesterone challenge. Many people may be familiar with it. Makes sense that lots of people have been prescribed that as like a solution. He said, take this pill for a few days and you should get a period. And if you don't, let me know. And my personality, I was not going to take that pill, but the whole conversation did spike my curiosity. I was like, what is the problem with not having a period? And that was the catalyst for me diving into the research and learning about it. But between recovery and that day of discovering I had this issue was a whole lot of denial, a whole lot of avoiding the problem and trying to out supplement HA and get my period back through like meditation or something. So I avoided it like the plague. And here we are. So I eventually just tried everything until it wasn't working. And that experience of trying things that didn't work helped me understand what I really needed to do.
Which was
eat more,
exercise
rest a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And I did, do that for a long time without getting my period back as well. And went further down this journey of, okay, well, now what's holding me back? Oh, okay. I'm also drinking way too much caffeine. And I'm also, having like still leaning on and slipping back into tendencies with my eating that isn't helpful. And I'm actually replacing weightlifting with walking a lot. So it wasn't a linear process for me. It was like ups and downs and mistakes and relapses. And I got a period and then I didn't get it again for 2 months and I had to troubleshoot and yeah, I've done all of the mistakes.
Me too. Your journey sounds like mine in that it's confusing because, okay, let's Google, HA recovery, like things that you can do. And if so, of course, me naturally being my HA recovery was actually like my eating disorder recovery was motivated by my HA recovery. So it was right. My eating disorder recovery first started off like, I just want to get my period. I just want to know if I can have a regular cycle. Right. Because at the time I've been cycling. I mean, I really never had given my body a chance to have like a natural period. So I just wanted to know that I would be okay. I just had gotten married. I knew I wanted to start a family someday. So just like you, I kind of was like, okay, something's wrong here. And just like you, I went down the path of, okay, let me go to my health food store. And I Googled some supplements to take, like some herbs that, quote, make your uterus hotter, like literally physically hotter. Yeah. And I'm like, that'll work. And it didn't. So it's like, okay. And same with you. I read the book, No Period, Now What, which I think a lot of people in HA do. And that really changed my life. But before that, I was like, I guess I have to eat more food. And I didn't take it seriously enough. I I didn't realize how stressed out my body was and how damaged my metabolism was. So I totally understand that. And I get that. And it's just an interesting journey. But looking back, it's so beautiful. And I'm happy that it didn't just come back when I did, the supplements and the meditation and the stress relief and barely eating anything more. It was a major sign for my body. So
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask you about being in the weightlifting, I guess, world. Is it kind of common for people to lose their periods? And I'm sure maybe even some people are like, that's good. Like I've just heard that could be a narrative kind of floating around in like the athletic space of like not having your periods, no big deal. It's fine. Right.
Yeah. 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 It's like a sign of you train hard enough. Right. And I think that's a big part of what holds people back. So a lot of people get their first period, but they struggle to get their second one. And what they don't necessarily notice is that the fact that they got their first period can actually be a trigger in and of itself to kind of relapse into the old habits, because having gotten your first period confirms weight gain. It confirms that you didn't work out as much, that you rested, and all the things that actually make you really nervous. And people hope and wish that they can start working those things back in just because they got one period. Mm-hmm. So I see that a lot in the athletic community, because getting your period back means not training really hard, which validates you as an athlete. So I think that not getting your cycle as an athlete can be very validating for people. And when they are cycling again, they feel as though they're not doing as much. Mm-hmm. And in weightlifting, it's a weight class sport. So your goal is to weigh a certain body weight on the day that you compete and lift. And you're usually trying to train at a certain body weight on your way there. And there's like, the silly thing about it is that people are so focused on hitting their weight class. But I mean, unless you're trying to break records or go to the Olympics or something, most of us should really just, I mean, this is a total tangent, but most of us should really just compete in the weight class that our body wants us to be, and stop fighting to be in a lower weight class just because it's kind of considered cool in weightlifting to be cutting weight to make weight for your weight
like
class.
to make yourself, I mean, it's all about body manipulation, not all of it, but at least like the bikini modeling competition, it's all about body manipulation. So yeah. But I'm assume that the weightlifting is also kind of similar to that, where you can be like, you know what, I'm going to take this even farther and go into a different weight or go into a lower weight. And
I'm gonna go down to the next lower weight class, and just like for fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not fun. Let's be real, people.
Yeah.
And counting your macros too. I'm sure that experience was not fun for you, because I've been there as well. And it's actually like one of those very numbing experiences of when I was doing the calorie counting and the macro counting. I felt it wasn't like hindering my life, so to speak. But then it wasn't until I stopped doing it and I realized how much of my time and energy I was spending doing that. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, it was sucking my life, and it was really controlling me. And like my food scale was telling me how I should feel, and it was telling me how hungry I should be. So I really realized it only after I stopped, because I felt it was very easy while I was doing it. So I didn't see it, it was so normalized for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's this control, and it's a routine. But I love what you just said. Something that basically my mission, or like the reason that I am obsessed with doing this and talking about this, is because recovery, getting your period back is great. Reducing the risk of osteoporosis and being able to get pregnant and all that stuff is great. But you get your whole life back. You get time back. You get focus. You get mental energy back. And I just have this like vision or dream that women are going to come to me and be like, oh, because you helped me let go of this obsession, I don't know, solved world hunger. Like I did something huge and important and meaningful to me or to the world, because I don't think we realize just how much obsessing about what we're eating is taking away from what we can offer the world and how much we can enjoy our life. Like it's actually sucking life out of us. And that sounds so dramatic, but until you break free from it, it's true. It just is sucking so much from us.
Yes, the potential. Like you do not know your potential. And I think it's a real breakthrough for a lot of people who do have HA or who are in recovery when it's like the moment you get your period back, it's not necessarily like you're done with recovery. You still have that whole, I don't know, there's a breakthrough that comes long, long after you get your period back. At least in my experience, I think it's just a sign, it's just a signal to your body that you're on the right track. But really, and even in the book, No Period Now What, she mentions, I think it's like 3 months after, but I really think that depends on you and where your recovery is mentally and how you're actually feeling, because it is such it's literally like life altering, mindset transforming experience to go through it. So I love that. And if anyone out there's listening and they're currently like, I just keep going, because it's really, like I did not think I was going to get my cycle back. I really had a lot of days where I thought, you know what, I can do this. But most of my days were like, nah, I don't think my body's going to be able to recover from this.
How long from when you began recovery to when you got your first period, what was that time frame?
The time frame for me was 9 months, but I was like black and white about it. And I didn't, obviously, like you said, my recovery wasn't linear either. And just like you, I think you had mentioned this, sorry, maybe you didn't, but I experienced my first period. I think I had very long cycles, like 40 to 60 days. So it wasn't like I was getting consecutive periods. And it really wasn't until a year or so after my first period, I had gone to eating disorder treatment, like after that. So it wasn't necessarily like recovery for me, I'd say, until about a year after I'd gotten my first period. So that would have been about a year and a half of me just pursuing recovery in general, just from my like eating problems and stuff.
Yeah.
How about you?
Kind of similar. Like I was, I consider that period of time where I was trying to out supplement HA and stuff as me trying to recover. But so that was like over a year. But from the moment that I actually did the protocol I needed to do, 3 months.
Wow.
But like, which fits the textbook description, right? For that a lot of us hold on to, but it took you 9 months, and it takes people different amount of time. And I think one of the downsides of everyone's hyper focus on the book of No Period Now What and stuff is just that there's a lot of numbers, like 2,500 calories and 3 months to do this. And so people focus on it a lot rather than just using it as reassurance and a guide. I get a lot of people like, it's been 3 months for me or 4 months for me and it still hasn't worked. Or I've been eating over 2,500 calories and it still hasn't worked. So yeah, like you were saying, just keep going. And yes, some people or the average person takes that amount of time, but you are very unique and different. And it might take you 9 months like it took Kate. And it's okay.
Yeah. And like, you have to remember the bell curve, like there's an average, but there's this huge like bell curve. You imagine the shape of a bell, like that's how the results are. So there's always, and I think you have to really personalize your experience, because yes, the studies matter, the numbers matter, the science matters, but at the end of the day, like none of that is your own experience. And you can't make a scientific experiment or a scientific study into your own life. That's where I think, people get tripped up. So that was a really good point.
Yeah. So much of it's emotional and like your own unique situation, and the stress component is also important. And different people are going through recovery at different times in their life. So,
Yeah.
Check out the latest footwear innovation from Adidas, the Adizero Adios Pro 2, which features carbon fiber energy rods that are both lightweight and precisely tuned for a more anatomical transition. Everything from the ultra-light polyester upper to the re-sculpted midsole and the reinvented outsoles are designed for speed. Visit adidas.com to learn more today.
Hey, I'm Katie Grossman, a trail and ultramarathon runner sponsored by New Balance. I'm also a creative professional, wife to my life and running partner, Dominic, and a very proud mom of 2 girls. Life has gotten a little crazy, especially after battling postpartum injury and an abdominal tumor. But running is still a huge part of my identity, and it legitimately improves my mental health. I'm working my way back to racing, but for now, I'm still finding peace on the trail. Go beyond the run at newbalance.com.
Like I mentioned, I really love your podcast, and I specifically wanted to talk to you about the one where you talk about not looking like an HAer. And I just think that's really interesting, because when people do come to me, and I am 100% sure people come to you and say, like, I don't feel valid in my hypothalamic amenorrhea recovery because I don't, quote, look the part, or I don't feel the part, or there's nothing that they can physically see in their life that would equal HA. Does that mean, you know what I mean? So I'd love for you to just talk about your experience with that, with other people in your life who come to you, and anything you have to say about that.
Yeah, this is a big part of my shtick and my story, on why a lot of people actually come and resonate with me. So yeah, that happened to me too. I don't necessarily resonate with having had an eating disorder, or I don't think I ever got that lean, or I never ate that few calories. And so they have a really hard time accepting that they could possibly have this diagnosis and it must be something else. And that happened to me. I was like, I'm not even that lean. No, people aren't worried about me. I'm not under eating, right? Because I was convinced that 1,800 calories was a ton of food for a female, and especially of my activity level. I've every 1 to 2 weeks I binge. So I'm not even in a consistent calorie deficit to be able to cause HA. All these reasons to me were ones that just made me think, I don't know if this is for me. And not to mention all of the people in my life also being skeptical that this could be what was happening to me. And that is a big part of what held me back for a long time.
That's interesting. I've never even, I had a full support from basically everyone in my life besides my old modeling agents, which is obvious, but I've never heard of, I don't have that experience. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating, the different experiences. And I think that's a part of what I have been able to bring into the community, is that perspective and that experience to validate other people's experience. And it was a thing for me to get people's support. I had to come out, and I chose to be really public and say, this is what's happening to me. And I have had these stories that I have been playing over and over in my head that, I don't deserve to recover because I'm not XYZ. And I know I don't look what you think someone with a hormonal imbalance would look like, or I know that I have presented as someone who is hyper healthy for a really long time. But, here's the thing. I'm going to try this because I haven't had a period in years, and not having one is actually really important. So that's what I did. And being public about it helped me get the support I needed to get. But at the time when I wasn't getting validated and wasn't getting support, I guess I was unsure, and I was consulting other people for their opinion. And that wasn't helpful because they don't know what they're talking about. They're also in the cycle and in the same society that I'm in, that has conditioned me to think this way and to be in disbelief that weight gain could be valuable or healthy for anyone in the world at all. So in educating other people on what I'm doing and going through, that's what I needed to do to get support. And now I have plenty of support.
Yeah, I love that because, whenever I presented with somebody asking me the question about, okay, my friends and family don't support me in whatever, whatever recovery they're going through, HA, eating disorder, I don't know, anything, or just like a new job, a new life pursuit, any of that. Like, I always imagine that, you have what is the saying? I said this recently. It's like you point your finger at somebody and then there's like 3 pointing back at you. So like if somebody can't receive like what you're doing, it's usually an insecurity from them, that they feel threatened or afraid or unsafe because you doing something outside of their norm is like invalidating to them. And they feel like, okay, now I'm going to have to change. And it can be very confronting in our lives when we need to change something, because discomfort isn't a great feeling, but really discomfort is where we grow, which is like a whole other podcast episode. But yeah, I'm sure that you educating them, or even like you, instead of you answering their question of like, why do you want to gain weight, or why would you gain weight? You could ask them a question, like, kind of spinning that mirror and like pointing it back at them is something that I think is really powerful too. Like you could even ask them, why does it bother you that I want to gain weight? So they kind of have that sort of flip reversal of like, okay, now the light's on me and I need to support this person. I need to figure out what's going on with me. I just think it's interesting.
It's really interesting. And it's one of the biggest pieces of the whole thing, right? Recovery is kind of simple. It's straightforward. Eat more, rest more. Why do we struggle so much? Because of the judgment of others and of the belief system that we have and they have. And what you're talking about is challenging people's belief system, which you don't want to do on a daily basis. People do not like their belief system challenged. And it happened to me, right? The very first time I ever heard the concept of gaining weight in order to restore health, I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, ever. It's so funny to look back at how black and white I viewed the world. And other people are like that. And other people in my life were completely shocked to hear you're intentionally gaining weight. There's no, like, how are you going to get people on board with that right off the bat, especially when they've never heard this concept, and it's becoming more and more spoken about. But when I was going through it, it was like, whoa,
me too.
You sure?
Same. I know. I'm like, now it's really becoming more of a topic that people are comfortable speaking about. And I feel like it's more like common knowledge, which is great. But yeah, like this world that we live in, 2021 is body focused. It's fitness focused. It's perfect diet focused. Like we really live in a world right now that is pretty stacked up against us as people, as women and as men, honestly, but especially as women, the world really tells us from the minute we can conceptualize it that our bodies are not good enough and that we have to change them. So that is essentially why it is so hard. People grow up with this stuff, with this idea that they have to fit into a box. And so I'm so happy for you, and I'm happy for the community that they have somebody like you to look up to who went through this experience not looking like an HA or whatever, and you just being like, I am an HA, or I did go through this, and my experience is just as validating as somebody who, like me, did fit more of the bill of like looking like I had HA and going through that experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That's it's really important to me that people acknowledge that you can lose your period at many different sizes and activity levels and stress levels.
And also I've heard in your podcast too that you talk about being sensitive and like being the type of person that's like very sensitive to your stress and environment, and losing your period. That's just like me. Like if I notice I'm a little more stressed, or if I notice I'm, maybe doing more modeling jobs that month and I'm not able to sit down and eat my lunch like fully, like I'm eating in the car fast, I'm not eating as much as I normally do. 100%, I know that my cycle is going to be long, or that I'm going to skip a month. Like it's just like body wisdom now. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing that now so I'm only 2 weeks postpartum. So I have a ways to go until I need to be looking at, okay, where's my cycle? But I can tell right now, just by the way I'm kind of living my life, I wouldn't be getting my cycle if I was, I had coffee before breakfast this morning, and I've been like not skipping breakfast, but delaying it because it's so hot in Texas and I really want to get a walk in the morning. I see myself doing these things that I know are going to delay bringing my period back if I don't dial those things in. Yeah.
But you're doing your best you're a mom for 2 weeks now. That's so new. And that's like,
oh yeah, I'm not going
to
stress myself out about it. Yeah, that's like another whole podcast episode, right? Like all of these shoulds, then you used to say, oh, I should not eat that, and I should avoid this, and I should work out, and then we replace it with I should be eating more treat foods and I should be resting, and we just like replace one with the other, and you can't do that. So I'm just noticing. I know a lot now. I can notice that behavior is not going to get me far. I should, progressively work towards getting back to eating in abundance and having a more nutritious lifestyle. I'm not going to like should myself about it.
That's great. I'm happy. Yeah. Shoulding. That's not good.
We should not should.
We should not should. Exactly. Yeah. So that's a great segue into talking about your conception. And I would love to be a mom someday. I do not know when that's going to happen. It feels very far away, living in Los Angeles, and just it's kind of chaotic here, honestly. So that's in my future, I hope. So I'd love to hear about your experience with that, and like going from having HA to going through HA recovery to becoming pregnant to becoming a new mom.
Yeah, sure. So HA recovery doesn't really end, right? Like you now know too much, and you're always going to be curious about your period and when it's coming, and was it optimal, and did I ovulate? And I, when I went to get pregnant, I didn't get pregnant the first try. And that's because my luteal phase, I talk about this a lot because it's very, very common with HAs, is that just because you have your period doesn't mean it's optimal. And I didn't have the second half of my cycle. It wasn't long enough, right? I wasn't producing enough progesterone in order for my corpus luteum to be sustained. And so it was disintegrating early, and I was not getting pregnant. And so for 2 months, I didn't get pregnant. And I realized, like we were talking about before, I was slipping back into old habits again. I really, like, the coffee thing is huge for me. I keep going back to drinking it first thing in the morning, and I really shouldn't. Like, that does not work for me. So I had to take a good look at myself after 2 tries, and someone who helps people get pregnant and helps people get periods back for a living. Why was this happening to me? And it's because I'm sensitive, like we talked about before. So I had to dial things in and back off on the exercise again. And I had to increase my food again. And I had to tweak things like stop drinking coffee first thing in the morning and just be more conscious about how I'm behaving day to day. And with that, I was able to, using the fertility awareness method, which is something I'm a really big proponent of, even for people who don't have their periods, I was able to use that to then get pregnant. So basically, keeping the fundamentals of getting your period back, using those to optimize my period, and then I was able to get pregnant after 3 months. So I had a restored cycle for well over a year before we started trying. And then it took 2 tries. And on the 3rd try, coming back to the foundations, I got pregnant. And that's kind of that story.
Amazing. I mean, I'm so happy for you. And it's
Thank you.
Such a beautiful thing. It's just amazing.
Yeah. It's good
Our
to
bodies
share.
and
It's good to share because people I get that all the time, right? Am I going to be able to get pregnant after having HA? And then getting pregnant and being really anxious about whether or not you're going to miscarry. And the stress just continues and continues for people.
Did you feel that? Or were you able to kind of coach yourself and be like, not the worrying, stressed out state?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no evidence to show that you have an increased chance of miscarriage thanks to having HA. So there's like nothing there for me to like lean on and be anxious about. I think a lot of people get anxious because they now associate themselves with just being someone that bad things happen to. And I am not in that mind space. And I don't encourage that for anyone. I really went into pregnancy with like, now that I'm pregnant, my body knows what to do. Like this, it's taking over and all I have to do is feed it and it's going to do the job. And I've always had that mindset, to be honest, which is another part of probably why it took me a while to recover from HA. But just like allowing myself to be happy and be excited and be positive and trust that things are all going to go well. For 8.5 months of my pregnancy, that's what happened.
That's amazing. Yeah. So how was being pregnant? Like, obviously you just surrendered to the process and you were like, okay, my body, like, how is it with your body changing? And like, just the whole experience, the symptoms, like, yeah.
Because I was completely weight restored before getting pregnant, I think that I did not experience like rapid, surprising weight gain in my pregnancy. And that meant that I didn't experience a lot of the struggles that a lot of other women do. So I can't speak to gaining 35 pounds in a short period of time. That just didn't happen to me because I gained it prior. So I was already kind of used to it and ready. And honestly, being postpartum is probably more challenging to me than being pregnant. I really enjoyed being pregnant. The hormones were great. My hair was great. And yeah, I didn't experience intense weight gain because I spent a year restoring my weight.
So like mentally and physically you were there. Like you were like, okay, like because it makes sense when you are, not at your ideal body weight, you're not at your set point, and you do end up falling pregnant. Your body is going to do everything in its power to suppress your metabolism and protect your baby. So you are going to rapidly gain weight. So it's one of those things that you can't really avoid. I mean, of course you see women on the street who are pregnant and you're like, whoa, they just have a basketball in their tummy sort of look. And everyone, I mean, I'm saying this generally because I don't necessarily want to do that, but everyone wants to be that person. And that's just a very small percentage of women.
It is. It's a really small percentage of women. And it depends on your starting point, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like my starting point, I had already gained a bunch of weight. My body didn't call to gain a ton more. But the world we live in, most women are living in some kind of restrictive way. It's just the way that it is. And it's crazy, but it's true.
Especially in pregnancy, like you said, postpartum, especially there's like the whole baby weight thing. Like, I can't imagine. I'm sure you're getting targeted ads for that or whatever. Cause like,
just wait until you're in it. Not only is the marketing that you get given absolutely wild, but people just like say weird shit to you because you're pregnant. Like I was getting a massage on a vacation and I was like 30 2 weeks pregnant or something. And the first thing she said to me was like, oh, I gained X amount of pounds and it took me this long to lose it. And I was like, okay. Like it's just the very first thing that comes to mind. And I think women have trauma around it and it like triggers them to talk about it. And I think that people just are obsessed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is traumatic. Like the whole experience, I imagine, of going through pregnancy, going through this life as somebody who has all the cards against them, being told their body's not enough, then going through something like pregnancy, then it's just like so much. It's like we cannot catch a break. Oh my gosh.
Way too much pressure. Yeah. And I feel that pressure. Like just, watching my body. You're kind of always watching to be like, how back to normal are you gonna get?
Right.
Like you keep an eye on it. But I've been doing a lot of mental work to not allow any of that to spiral me or to like let those voices that don't go anywhere, right? Like your ED, disordered eating voice, it's always there. You just have to have tools and strategies and stuff to navigate it rather than let it navigate you. And so that's what I'm going through right now.
Can you give some examples just of what works for you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, it's a lot of inner dialogue. Like I journal a lot. I talk to my husband a lot. I talk to myself a lot. And I have the HA Society community. So we have like a pregnancy group. And I think that having people to talk to about it is key. So for me, journaling is just this act of like weird, incoherent conversation with myself where I get all of the weirdness and negativity out on paper first thing in the morning. And that is absolutely clutch. Without that, I would be believing that the weird thoughts that I'm having in my head are true. And they're not. Like whatever you're thinking in your head and not saying out loud or putting down on paper, you will believe is true until you can look it directly on paper or hear yourself saying it directly to someone else. Until that happens, you believe the weird things that you're saying. So for me, that's a really important tool and strategy, is to be writing things down and to be having conversations with people that you trust. So for me, that's like my HA community and my husband. The other important one, I'm going to like reuse my husband as like a second tool, even though I just mentioned it. He is the person that I can turn to and say, hey, I'm having this effed up thought. This is what it is. And I lay it out. I'm like, I'm feeling anxious about the fact that I have done no exercise for 2 weeks whatsoever because I'm postpartum and I'm just like on the couch and I'm still eating the same amount of food as I would before. And it's like, it's starting to build up and make me feel anxious. And then he'll just talk to me about it. So those are very like practical, tactical things that I do. And he is now skilled. He had to be taught how to talk to me about this kind of stuff, but we're there now.
Same really with mine.
Yeah, they're not good at it.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, it's surprising if they are. It's like, what world are you from? Like people who like know how to talk to people who've gone through this whole game of food and body challenges. It's actually not a game at all. It's a very, very sad situation, but like, it's crazy when people are like, yes, I know how to talk to you. I'm like, how do you know? You must be an alien. So, well, thank you so much for sharing. Like I think it's encouraging just to know that even somebody who's an expert at this, like you, and somebody who's very versed in this world, like still struggles and still needs to remind herself that it's a life journey, or at least it's a seasonal journey for you, especially going through pregnancy. So those are good tips. And I wanted to ask too, just in general for HA recovery, if you could just give like your top 2 to 3 tips, anything you have to say that really strikes a chord with like your HA Society members or just like you in general, not necessarily pregnancy or postpartum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the two things I just said before, exactly the same for this. But I think a very helpful tool is bringing yourself to the root cause. Okay. So you are not actually anxious, scared, worried, nervous, whatever about weight gain. You're worried about what it means. And it's really important to come to an understanding of why that is scary to you. Okay. So like the weight gain actually means I won't be loved by my partner. The weight gain actually means that I won't be seen as this superior person, or changing my strict eating means that I'm no longer better than other people. And you need to keep like peeling away at the truth. And there's a ton of them. And a lot of them are not real. And you just gotta like keep peeling away. So sitting down, again, journaling or talking it out with someone, like what is actually the root cause here? That's the very first step to now being able to, you actually have things to work on, right? Fear of weight gain, you could body positivity yourself through it, or you could, really figure out what's at the root challenge here. So I think that's a very important one. And another tool or strategy or tip for recovery would be, I think, being constantly checking in with the information in the world and the space and the community. So I was always looking for podcasts and books. And that's a big part of why I started my show, right? Because there was a lack of it at the time. But keeping those conversations happening in your head while you're in recovery is important, because as soon as you take your headphones off or you close that book, you're going to reintegrate back into society that is sending you a different message. So if you're out there constantly hearing a diet message, it's important that you're immersing yourself in the opposite message as well. And that might sound like obvious or not particularly enlightened, but it's just a tactical thing that you can do, is just be constantly listening to Eat the Cake and the HA podcast and all of the other awesome shows that are now out there, because we have your back. And I think you need to have those voices in your ear keeping you on track. So a lot of people worry that they're like over consuming in that kind of content, and they're like, I need a break. And that's totally valid. But also it's okay to just lean on this stuff. When you're actually over it and you're ready, you will just like stop listening naturally. So I think if this is something you need and you want to keep listening and binging, do it, because it's actually really, really helpful. So education and just like having a community and putting these things in your ear and in your mind to keep you focused is really, really helpful.
Totally. Yes. And it's true. Like I don't want to have the exact same audience as I did when I first started, because I want these people to move on and recover. And like, totally, you don't have to still like all my pictures just because of course, thank you. But like, you don't have to still follow me or like all my pictures. If, you are recovered, I think people, I'm so rooting for every single person who's in this journey. And so I love that you mentioned that. And I also love your first tip of that, root cause, because right now I'm in school for eating psychology, and it's exactly what you mentioned. And come January, I'm going to graduate and start working with people, and it's exactly that. It's like, it's not the symptoms of eating disorders. It's not the eating disorder. It is a belief that we are carrying around with us 100% of the time, that's affecting not just our food and body, it's showing up in our food and body, but it's affecting everything. And it's interesting too, because HA and eating disorders and food and body challenges in general are a collective problem. It's not like they're not individual problems. Like we are not the only people in the world who have had HA. We're not inventors of HA. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to think of it that way. Like this is just something that has manifested in us as people. And you can kind of think of it that way and think, okay, this problem that the whole world is exposed to has manifested in me. And it's my sort of like responsibility to do what I will with that and to have it build up inside of me and then be a light in that sense. So it's kind of like meta, but I love what you said. I'm just like very happy that you said that. And I hope that people are inspired because it is so much more than the weight gain and so much more than the stopping exercise. It's so much more than that.
It is. And I guess like I'll just finish or like put a cherry on top with all of that of you're not going to like release yourself of this pressure to be healed completely. You're not really going to become this wildly different person who can't remember what it was like to be going through recovery and to have, you know, weird hang-ups around food and body image and stuff. But what you have right now is an opportunity to inspire others to have a new lease on life. And you were saying like that it's, you know, acknowledging that I have still got hangups around these things and that I still go through these things. I have no imposter syndrome at all around what I'm doing, right? Yes, I still struggle all the time. Yes, I slip back into old habits. But the fact that I can see how far I've come and the fact that that I'm still experiencing those things keeps me very motivated and still present and still connected with what other women are going through and the changes that the world needs to see. So I am more than happy to be constantly bombarded by the voice in my head. And I know that a lot of people don't feel the same way. A lot of people would like to be completely rid of this and have this like amazing intuitive eating mindset and to feel nothing when they like look in the mirror or see a photo of themselves. But I don't think that's realistic. But what is realistic is being able to do all of those things, hear the voice in your head and know that you're now stronger than it and see other women struggling and know what to say to them or be able to have compassion for them and compassion for people who don't struggle with this issue, but still have totally disordered mindsets around eating and nutrition. Like this is a gift. It's a new lease on life, which sounds so dramatic, but
it's true. It's true. I'm here for this.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I just wanted to like, add that on that this is just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the work. It's the work of the world, people. And it's true. Like I'm 100% sure that in your friend group of people who are struggling with food and body stuff and maybe HA, maybe eating disorders, whatever it may be, I'm 100% sure that if you offer this space of like healing from this, and if you offer those like nuggets of wisdom and insight, you will inspire so many people and you will receive like the energy that you receive from being a perfect fitness body is nothing compared to the energy that you receive from being like the quality of the energy you receive, the life that you receive from being authentically just yourself. And like people want that, even if it's subconscious, they totally want that. So yes.
No one ever thanked me for being lean.
Totally. Yeah.
But people thank me for helping them accept their own body and get their period back and get pregnant and all of those things. And that's amazing. Like
amazing.
Can't be beat.
Amazing. Yeah, same. Okay, well, tell me a little bit more about HA Society, where people can find that information if they feel like joining a support group.
Yeah. The HA Society is a community where women can come in and we have weekly like twice a week minimum community calls. So the idea is that we're meeting face to face, we're building relationships, we're seeing we're not alone, and we're validating our experience. And then we basically coach each other on all of the things that you and I just talked about today, realistically. And then inside is also like mini courses on HA recovery, fertility awareness tracking, body image, mindset, pregnancy and postpartum for HAs, all of those things. So if you're interested in getting a community and getting like one-on-one coaching with myself inside of the community and the group and with our other community coaches and all of that good stuff, you can go to thehasociety.com. And that website has just like blogs and resources and all that good stuff too. If you don't want to join, you can still go and check that out. And come listen to me on the Hypothalamic Menorrhea podcast.
Yes. I will leave everything linked. And thank you so much for being on this show. I feel so inspired, and I'm sure people will listen.
Thank you. I'll have to have you over on the show as well.
Yes, I'd love to. I love talking to HA. It's like something about it. It just feels it's the best.
Well, as you can tell, I went on like a million tangents and probably made little to no sense with some of the things.
Oh my gosh, I love tangents. I usually tell people we love a tangent because that's where the real juicy stuff happens.
That's how you know you're in it. You're just, exactly.
Okay, well, amazing.
Check out the latest footwear innovation from Adidas, the Adizero Adios Pro 2, which features carbon fiber energy rods that are both lightweight and precisely tuned for a more anatomical transition. Everything from the ultra-light polyester upper to the re-sculpted midsole and the reinvented outsoles are designed for speed. Visit adidas.com to learn more today.
Hey, I'm Katie Grossman, a trail and ultramarathon runner sponsored by New Balance. I'm also a creative professional, wife to my life and running partner, Dominic, and a very proud mom of 2 girls. Life has gotten a little crazy, especially after battling postpartum injury and an abdominal tumor. But running is still a huge part of my identity, and it legitimately improves my mental health. I'm working my way back to racing, but for now, I'm still finding peace on the trail. Go beyond the run at newbalance.com.